model that I probably had in college and so forth was be successful, be successful, be successful. It was something like that. Successful to do what? I actually tell the story in a TEDx talk of finding myself underneath my bed, terrified of what's going on in the other room as I hear crashing and my parents screaming at each other and my dad's drunk. And I'm really thinking, like, is there going to be blood when I come out? And having a thought in my head at 8 years old, I'm going to do something. And then realizing if I get out there, I saw my brother almost get hit in the face when he tried to separate the two of them. And he was 3 years older than me at 11-year-old. And so I just cried and huddled underneath the bed. And so those kind of deep wounds, some of those I didn't find until later. That very story I didn't find until I was well into my journey with regard to acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, which is what I'm known for. So at the time, I think I was just running as fast as I can and doing things that were logical, reasonable, sensible, and pathological, like most of us. We don't come with a rule book. We do what seems sensible, and guess what organ is telling that? It's the one between our ears, and that's the one that creates the problem. So I didn't, I had the great good fortune to develop a panic disorder and all of the unhealthy things I was doing to try to deal with an unhealthy situation. Thankfully, the deities or somebody said, no, you're not going to get away with that. Maybe just my body said, no, you're not. And so that's been the story of my life since my feet hit the ground and I realized that I wasn't going to avoid it just by achievement and workaholism and a lot of grants and publications. And no, look around you, you'll see a lot of your friends or family are trying to do it that way. It's not viable. You're going to have to slow down and show up and face. It doesn't mean you have to wallow, spend all your time going through the entrails of your history, but you need to take it on board in a way that you can use the difficult parts of your history to produce the kind of life that you really desire to produce, at least in terms of what it's about. And that is kind of the story of the methods that we put together that I think of now with 5,000-6,000 studies showing that they're helpful. I can sit here and say it's one of the more studied approaches in all the world of behavioral science, and it can do good. There's things in here, but that journey was complicated.
Well, we're going to get into the details of what that looks like and how that can help people. But first, let's continue on your journey a little bit here. And you talked about, the development of your panic disorder later in life, which is really interesting because this didn't really start to affect you until you became a psychologist. So let's talk about how that started to come on and affect your work and affect your life at that time.
When I wrote this book, A Liberated Mind, that's sort of the science story, personal story, kind of a think book, self-help book combination. And I went back and actually tried to reach everybody that I could, as far back as I could. Old girlfriends, everybody. And had conversations about them as to what was I like back then? What did they see? And what people saw around me was a kind of an odd, almost schizoid, kind of strange person who didn't respond very much, who was very smart, who worked hard, but was out of sync with other people in a way. One of my old girlfriends said, you just weren't there. And so I think that was because I dared not be there. But it wasn't thoughtful. I didn't know what I was avoiding. I was just avoiding. If you do a good job avoiding, you don't know what you're avoiding. You have to delude yourself. Now, of course, at some level, you know. Like I told the story of the little boy under the bed. Well, that showed up later after my panic disorder as I realized. I could have told you, my parents fought and stuff, but I wouldn't really know how deep that wound go and how terrifying it was to see some of the things I saw as an 8-year-old and earlier. But, as I moved forward and worked, got the academic job. I'm an assistant professor. Go, go, go. I ran into a conflicted situation in the department I was in. And as I say in the TED Talk, I had my first panic attack occurred when I was sitting at a department meeting, watching full professors fight in a way that only wild animals and full professors are capable of. And